Hello everybody and welcome to the Bratislava Hanus Days online. It's our third and final day, but I believe some of our highlights are still yet to come. And I firmly believe that the following lecture and discussion called The Remedy for the Economic Crisis is going to be one of them. Before we start, let me say a few short words. BHD is Cultural Economic Festival focused on the encounter of Christianity and modern society. The festival in its original form has been postponed until autumn, but we didn't let that stop us from bringing you important discussions and inspiring guests and speakers in online form. There is a free access to our festival for anyone. At the same time, we would greatly appreciate any financial support from you. Please consider buying an online ticket on our website bhd.sk. Thank you for your generous support, without which we couldn't organize this festival. Speaking of the ones that made this festival possible, big thank you goes to our partners and sponsors. We would like to thank our main partner, Ploud Company. Besides BHD Online, Ploud also provides complex software solutions to electronic identification and authentication using electronic ID and mobile devices. Thank you. We would like to thank our main media partner, conservative newspaper Postoj, as well as all of our other partners. There will be two streams. For the interpreted version of the discussion, stay on our website bhd.sk, and for the original English version, please go to our YouTube channel, Hanusové dny. You can become a part of the discussion using the platform Slido. Click on slido.com, and with the password BHD, you can ask questions and upvote the ones that you like the most. And now, let me present our host, Kristína Votrubová, and let me say that the floor is yours, Kristína. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful time.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Hello to everyone. And well, I would also like to welcome you to this event, which I think is really very actual and interesting because, as we all know, the pandemic of coronavirus has hit or is hitting the economy very hard. And well, maybe we don't know how much hard, but what we know is that the economic recession is going to come and that the times are going to be a little bit harder than before. But as the saying says, well, the hard times are a good opportunity for the change. And so we can take this as an opportunity, and this is what we are going to talk about at this event. We are going to talk about how this change could be and what does the Christianity has to say about that. And well, I'm pleased to introduce you our first speaker, which is Chong from Singapore. And he is the CEO of the consulting company Consulus, which focus on innovation and transformation of companies to be able to face the challenges of the 21st century. And Mr. Chong works with small companies, but also with big multinational firms, and so he has a great experience. But also he gives conferences worldwide and has a great number of followers on social media. And that is because he's not only a consultant, but he's a promoter of a different idea of economy. And this vision of economy is based on the idea of cooperation and unification. And in fact, this idea comes from the economy of communion introduced by Chiara Lubich, the founder of Focolare movement. Well, but now I will stop talking and let's listen to Lawrence himself. Welcome.
First of all, thank you, Kristína. Thank you, PhD, for this invitation to speak and for your excellent and very provoking question. What can the economy of communion offer in this moment of COVID-19 and crisis? Before COVID-19, dear friends, a growing chorus of prominent economists such as Jeffrey Sachs has called for a change in the economic system. Even hedge fund managers like Ray Dalio know that things need to be different. As we speak, COVID-19 has aggravated the inherent weaknesses in the system and will trigger the greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression. As COVID-19 continues to wreak economic havoc, it is clear that material poverty, which we can see, is the consequence of deeper forms of poverty, such as the poverty of trust, poverty of institutions, poverty of solutions. For example, the global political solidarity, which was evident and led to coordinated actions to soft-land the economic crisis of 2008, is now mostly non-existent. This has severe implications for billions of people, as we need governments in this crisis to be able to see eye to eye to collaborate and coordinate economic healthcare decisions more than ever. Thus, we have entered a great unknown. As we witness the consequences of decades-long efforts by a growing number of extremists, nationalist leaders who continuously discredit and disregard global, regional networks and institutions that enable collaboration. many citizens support the narrative of leaders who trumpet the notion that anything global and collaborative is evil and inefficient. Yet the same leaders shamelessly claw for absolute power whenever possible. COVID-19 has shown that an economy walled off from the world, a nation-first economy that does not recognize interdependence, is not realistic and cannot work in the real world. In the recent interview, Pope Francis said that this COVID-19 is a propitious time to be open to the Spirit, who can inspire us with a new imagination of what is possible. This crisis has led to a deep and systemic rethink about how humanity lives, works, plays, and prays. The sentiment these days, however, is rather depressing. News of death, economic ruin tend to fill our social media feeds. However, there are bright sparks as I see a groundswell of grassroots, individual, and corporate action coming together to overcome these unprecedented challenges. So instead of continuously talking about problems, I'd like to invite all of us to think positively about solutions on what we can contribute together as a global Christian faith. As a faith, we have the largest number of healthcare and educational entities. We lead and can influence many global companies too. How can we boldly imagine a new economic vision with solutions, the ones that are inspired by the Beatitudes of Jesus, to shape a fairer and sustainable economic system post-COVID-19? An example of a positive thinker inspired by faith in moments of crisis is Chiara Lubich, the winner of the UNESCO Peace Prize, a Catholic woman leader of the 20th century and founder of the Focolare movement. She inspired many of us in the fields of business, politics, education, and religion that our faith is meant to be a useful instrument to overcome these visions and bring about the common good. The movement that Chiara Lubich founded when she was in her 20s during the Second World War reached Singapore in the 1990s. Encountering it changed my life as a teen and my view of the world. Singapore in those days was focused on making money and being successful. So the thought of building a shared world as a priority never crossed my mind as being possible. But what I witnessed, a community that is always welcoming to people globally, that is capable of generating generosity by loving first, helped me understand that building a united world is possible. I became generous and willing to share because of my experience with the movement. But the thing is, no one ever told me or forced me. It's a consequence of seeing and learning. To help you understand the key principal roots of the economy of communion, EOC, it will be useful to trace, in brief, the experience of Chiara and her friends from Trent in Italy, leading to 1991, when she launched the Economy of Communion initiative. During the Second World War, with all the atrocities, there was a deep lack of trust. And who could blame them? People did not have hope as they witnessed immense horrors, even doubted God. Because of the lack of hope and trust, they hoarded instead of sharing. Hiding under bomb shelters as they reread the Gospels, Chiara and her friends first found hope by bravely believing God is love, an idea they believe cannot be overcome by bombs. With this fiery optimism, this led them to love by giving away to those in need whatever they had. Surprised by this, because these were very young girls who did not show fear or look defeated, many people started to give to them, so that these girls could help others. A large community of trust soon grew rapidly. Just to point out the practicality of Chiara's thoughts and actions in the beginning, her goal was to solve the social problems in the poor region of northern Italian Trent. Chiara Lubich soon learned that this loss of hope and trust in people and God was deep and permeated every level of society. So this fountain of positive humanity which Chiara and her group of friends had attracted scholars, politicians, religious leaders who were fascinated by this small group that seemed to be able to generate such enthusiasm for common good and also bring a great diversity of people together. One example in the 1950s was a large holiday camp in the Dolomite Mountains, which the movement called the City of Mary, where thousands of people from Europe would come for a few days or weeks to immerse themselves in this positive energy of the common good and unity. People would share meals, rooms, and understand how this vision of a united world inspired by Jesus can work. Among them, simple workers, teachers, engineers, even politicians such as Di Gaspari, Gino Giordani. These formative experiences of being able to inspire trust and mutual giving across societal classes informed Chiara Lubich. She understood the inspiration of God for her was to bring about new ways of uniting people. When the Soviets sent tanks to crush peaceful demonstrators in Hungary in 1956, her act of defiance was to launch a global group of professionals who would be inspired by the gospel to bring about peace and unity wherever they serve. When youth in the 1960s were caught up with false promises of peace and freedom, she founded a global movement for youth to go beyond selfish desires and seek to serve others for a united world. In 1966, when the tribe in Africa faced extinction and is in need of medical aid, she sent not only doctors, but introduced a way of service that respected the dignity of the tribes. Through these initiatives, there is a characteristic that underpins the thinking of Chiara Lubich. Hers was not a feel-good movement, but one with a set of tools for unity in different situations. Because she was a teacher herself, she understood how important it is to recognize the root causes of problems before introducing new methodologies to bridge division and inequality. So as she flew over Sao Paulo in 1991, she noticed the slums surrounding Sao Paulo, and she felt pain to see this crown of thorns. So she wondered if there is a new way to bridge this inequality. There in Brazil, she proposed the concept of an economy of communion, a new generation of enterprises that will not just work for themselves, but will share some of their profits to alleviate the burdens of the poor around them, and also to form new people who will commit to shaping a new economic system. 29 years later, 800 enterprises of different industries in 5 continents have experimented with this concept and proved that it is possible to build an enterprise on the premise of love for neighbor and be sustainable. We can also say with certainty about the following, that beyond pursuing the end of poverty, the economy of convenience seeks to build enterprises that are places of well-being, filled with trust and respect for the dignity of each and everyone. And above all, the economy of communion seeks to introduce a new systemic form of economic innovation to solve material, relational, and institutional poverty. In 2017, Pope Francis met the global movement of the economy of communion, and he was deeply aware of Chiara's spirit. He gave us a new mandate when he said, "The economy of communion, if it wants to be faithful to its charism, must not only care for the victims, but build a system where there are ever fewer victims, where possibly there may no longer be any. As long as the economy still produces one victim and there's still a single discarded person, communion has not yet been realized. The celebration of universal fraternity is not full. Therefore, we must work towards changing the rules of the game of the socio-economic system. Imitating the Good Samaritan of the Gospel is not enough, end quote. After hearing this, all of us in the EOC movement did a deep reflection. We understood that the Holy Father was asking us to go beyond the EOC movement, to seek other friends and partners, to achieve a more significant impact, or to quicken our ability to achieve impact on the socio-economic system. The most important effort, supported by the economy of communion now, is the upcoming Francesco economy, which will gather 2,000 young change makers, economists, entrepreneurs in November to rethink the rules of the current system and propose new ideas for a fairer and sustainable economic system. Consulus, the firm where I serve, is an economy of communion enterprise. In our work as an innovation and design firm in 16 countries, we try and do our part daily to push for change, not in a way that condemns others, but also to involve as many as possible, even those who are not always conscious about doing their part for a fairer economy. We are a small organization though, but we believe that it is the will of God and He will show us the way. Some of the activities that we are involved in, and we believe that it is also an opportune moment for you to think about how you can get yourself involved, because we see that these are the issues that matter. In our work with educational institutions, I realize how pervasive the thinking is that if you want to be successful, you have to be selfish and vain. But if we want to shape a more balanced and inclusive economic system, we need to start from young. We need schools to be schools of communion for the youngest to higher education, to show them that an interdependent world, a world that respects each other, is actually the more sensible way to go and to build a future together. Together with a Catholic university in Taiwan, we help them shape an inclusive methodology inspired by the Ursuline spirituality. This method is now used to help students discover their purpose, help leaders realize their roles as servant leaders better. And next year, in our Shape the World Summit, we will be talking about Education 4.0, precisely for this purpose, to shape a better generation. Since I know many of you are in schools, how can we work together to develop concrete solutions on how we are influencing other youth that doing something for the common good and being sustainable is actually workable and effective? During COVID-19, large companies may be able to ask for the bailout, but many small companies will not be able to. And we need to do whatever we can to ensure the survival of many small enterprises. Such enterprises enable the employment of millions of people worldwide. As COVID-19 rages on, we have started offering a free advisory session to SMEs and nonprofits on how to plan their next move in this situation. It will be good for us to do more as a global Christian community to support small businesses wherever we are. You can choose to learn more about the small business near your house. Buy from them if you can. Help to promote their businesses in your social media feed. We also believe that the current rules are geared towards entrenching the elite. Another more serious problem is that our global middle class is not growing, but shrinking globally. This crisis has shown how fragile the middle class is. So it is essential for us to influence policymakers, business leaders to enable healthy growth in the middle class. So it cannot be just about ensuring minimum wage, but how can the system provide dignified pay? This is why, as a management consulting firm, we decided that we have to grow substantially in order to be able to influence policymakers and help firms transform in order to support the growth of a viable middle class. But we will need more people to do the same together with us to see where we can influence policymakers and corporations in order to support and commit to the growth of a sustainable and healthy middle class all around the world. After COVID-19, we will need a greater effort to renew trust and further improve our cities in terms of healthcare and inclusion. COVID-19 has shown that racism continues to run deep and that our healthcare system around the world are not able to do more for the least. Another part of our work is urban development. For the last 3 years, we have been developing solutions to get real estate developers to see the value of building inclusive developments that enable lower income groups to be part of those plans. We have hosted conferences to discuss how new innovation and ideas can shape sustainable cities of inclusion. And we have been pushing for a rethink in healthcare solutions to ensure that those who have less money will still be able to get quality medical care, and yet the business models are sustainable. I'd like to conclude by saying this. As a young person myself, involved in a movement for change since I was a teenager, it's important for us to know that change will not simply happen, even with a crisis of this scale. Many crises have happened before. Things went back to business as usual. The last financial crisis did not result in a fairer economy. So if we want change to happen, then we need to know that it's a very long game. What the world needs now is not just ideas, but more committed persons who will enter the different fields. And perhaps these are environments filled with very toxic people. But if we can just find a few more purpose-driven leaders in each sector committed to change for the long term, then we have a higher chance of success when the people in power are also those who care for the least and excluded. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your keynote, and we are going to discuss it now a little bit. But before, I would like to introduce our two other guests, which we are going to talk about this topic with. So it's Stanislav Lencz, who is the director of Consulus here in Slovakia, and Mr. Martin Sepp, who is the director of Cloud Company. And well, I remember I would like to ask one question about the economy of communion, and it is and about the change which is needed. And it is that not so long time ago, the Financial Times, one of the major economic newspapers, came with a very shocking cover. It was all yellow with big black words, and it was something like the capitalism has to change because it doesn't work. And so, and there are other movements which has nothing to do with Christianity, and they are like they want a more responsible business, and so. And so my question is, because sometimes some companies like really talk about more responsible business and so, but for me it feels a little bit superficial. And so my question is, why is economy of communion different, and why it can really change the core of the business?
do we answer now?
Yeah.
Okay, if I may briefly explain, thank you for that very good question. I think we have a situation where there is the desire to change. But our problem is not the framework. Our problem is actually the mindset and the culture. If we don't change the premise or the principles of our culture, we will never have a fairer economy. And please allow me to explain. We have an economic system that puts a higher emphasis on achieving more at the expense of others. That has a higher emphasis on saying that growth at all costs, regardless, people are abandoned, they don't have enough, let's not bother about it. Let's achieve higher and higher GDP growth. Now, when you have such a premise, it means that your orientation is limited to a few and unable to spread what we call a sizable and a reasonable amount of wealth, because that is not your focus in the first place. So if you have these measures, and then you generally have a culture, and an entire education system, I must say, an entire education system that have pushed for such ideas for almost 100 years, then you know that it's not as simple as, okay, let's do corporate social responsibility, let's have better corporate, let's have better governance in politics. Is too simplistic, and which is why I think what the economy of communion is asking for, and is different, is because it's time to be really honest with ourselves, that we are unable to create these virtuous results simply because our entire system doesn't allow us to do that. And the system is a consequence of the people. And which is why it's interesting for me in 1991, Chiara Lubich literally say that these companies cannot just share their money with the poor. We have to invest in a new generation of people. It seems that she's quite wise to understand that you need really new mindsets. If you have old mindsets, you're not going to change everything. Even Jesus said that to us 2,000 years ago. And it's interesting that in the Bible, constantly Jesus is asking the people to go beyond, to be new people. Yeah. So I would say that the long and short of it is that the EOC is not trying to be a socially responsible framework. No, there are other people who do that. Okay, if you're a well-run company, you're following this ethical principles, good for you, you get a badge. This is not the aim of the economy of communion. The aim of the economy of communion is rather systemic. It's talking about re-changing this culture to enable development. It's not about everybody having an equal share, but it's about having a fairer share. So that's a very, very different thing. That means, how do we enable people to ensure everyone have opportunities to grow, to raise families, and to do everything in freedom? So I would say it's an upgrade of capitalism, but it is what capitalism was meant to be, common capital, in order to enable a sustainable society. So number one, mindset shift. This is the difference about the economy of communion. Number two, systemic. The whole system has to change. And number three, I would say the unique emphasis of Chiara Lubich is education. How can we educate a newer generation in the youth, a newer generation among leaders, a newer generation of politicians? Yeah.
Thank you very much. I have another question, but before, I would like to remind our audiences that you can join our discussion and you can ask questions on the web platform Slido. So you just have to type slide.do and ask your question. Thank you. And well, my other question is that while I was listening to you, I was thinking that I really like the idea, but I'm not a businesswoman. I'm a normal employee, but I would like to contribute. And so my question is, like normal people like me, which are employees and they aren't doing business, we can do something to start a change or to start to live the economy of communion?
Yes, certainly. The uniqueness of the economy of communion is that it has young people, has professionals who don't run enterprises. They are professors. And as I was sharing that the aim of the EOC worldwide is to build a broad enough um, community. They don't have to be part of the EOC, but hopefully the principles of it uh, is shared by a larger and larger group of people in order to push it towards what we call a positive tipping point. And that's why the Francesco economy is very important for us. Many people who are coming for Francesco economy, they are not part of the economy of communion. We have many partners, many friends who are trying to make this massive event work. And after Francesco economy, there will be other collaborations. Even leading the Francesco economy, we have a lot of initiatives going around in different continents. And so I would say that the idea now is, so long as you think that the economy needs to change, it's like if you think that your phone needs to upgrade, it's time to upgrade the operating system, and you agree with us. So join us in downloading the new operating system, which happens to be called the economy of communion.
Okay, and another question is that I would like to all the people to adopt economic of communion, and as we have mentioned that there really in the society there is a desire of a change of the capitalism and how the economy works. So is it possible that this economy of communion inspire also non-Catholics?
Yes, Consulas is not a Catholic company. We are an example. My partners, there's a Muslim, there are atheists, there are Buddhists, and other Protestants. We are one big family. And we have shown that for 16 years, the economy of communion is attractive and is doable. And also in the economy of communion, there are a lot of enterprises who are not Catholics, but they understand where it came from, they appreciate it, and they are leaders of the economy of communion movement. And I think the beautiful thing about this growing movement is that we are able to learn from each other. And sometimes, just to give a personal example for myself, my partner, she's an atheist. One day I was a little bit upset with a client, and she listened to me. After a while, after I finished my complaints, she gave me this comment, and she said, "Lawrence, maybe you did not love enough." And I mean, as a Christian, when someone said that to you, you expect it from a Christian, but you never expect it from your business partner who is not a Christian herself, right? But she was able to give me a very fair critique that I was not loving the client as I should. So just to say that there is this wonderful relationship and dynamic inspired by the economy of communion that it really shows you that the vision promised by Jesus is actually very useful as instrument, that it can include everybody, and everybody feels at home and not intimidated. Yeah.
Thank you. And now we have some questions on Slido from our audience. And well, the first question is that is there some way, or how could we introduce some of these ideas into our laws as a country, if it's possible to create some laws that would induce to live economy of communion?
There are a lot of professors in the economy of communion movement. They have done a lot of research and a huge body of work. One of these amazing pieces of work is a civil economy with very concrete recommendations. It cuts across policy and a variety of things. And I think we'll be very happy to help facilitate some of those discussions if anyone needs a resource. But the thing is that there's been a lot of work being done to understand how policies need to be updated to ensure inclusion and participation of everybody.
And another question is, which I think our other two guests would or could respond better, that it's if there are some companies in Slovakia which are example of economy of communion, but maybe we can do it like a bigger picture. Are there some examples of companies that are really trying to follow the economy of communion, which you could talk us about?
Martin, do you want to take that?
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, yes. And I think then I think that right after Chiara Lubich launched the project or the initiative or the movement of the economy of communion in the whole world, and so in Slovakia, so in Czech Republic, and in our countries here in Central Europe, there were people who tried to respond to this. And interestingly, on one hand, there were like existing entrepreneurs which took the idea and tried to implement it in their way of thinking, in the way of making decisions, in the way of living their professional relations with partners, with suppliers, with employees, with clients, and so on. On the other hand, there were people who felt this like a challenge for their lives. I think a kind of special challenge in our parts where people were not used to drive companies because of the past we had here. And so we've seen a series of people like starting with small production of wooden toys. We had a bakery. We had a family business which is producing ceramics. On the other hand, there were people with, say, serious companies like production of transporting material, for example, in Czech Republic, right, Alaska, or other companies. There is one in our friends in Czech Republic which are doing demolitions, for example. So imagine a company of economy of communion which is doing demolitions, and others. Similarly, as it was already mentioned, also Consulus, which was launched last year in autumn here in Slovakia, is member of this network. On the other hand, it's not only companies; it's also students. There are a lot of young people which, starting with 90s, took different topics pertinent to economy of communion and choose them as the titles of their diploma work, for example. And this is happening up to now. Also recently, there were some friends of us who did this with success. So this is more or less the picture here. Of course, what we want most of all is to be open and to create together with our friends, like also the fellowship of Ladislav Hanus and others, to create like spaces where people can talk about, where people can exchange, where people can come up with their ideas, with their dreams, and confront themselves with others, with their experiences, with their insights. So this would be the way also how to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we are going to talk about this a little bit more, but before here we have a really great question. It's really very specific, and it's: I'm a baker and I have a bakery. How can I implement or live the principles of economy of communion?
Well, we serve bakeries, so we are kind of familiar with them. I think the first premise is to start off with identifying that how are you baking with love? And what I mean is, when you are baking with love, that means the whole process and everyone is involved in that process. Do they feel love in the process of baking the cake or the bread? Because the other problem is for something so meaningful that move many people's hearts when it comes to a birthday party, sometimes a bakery can become really a very industrialized environment, a factory. But then that's not the economy of communion. What the economy of communion wants is that it is a factory. You are doing with your flour and everything, and you have the whole supply chain, but yet everything is done with dedication and everything is done with love. There is mutual understanding. Everyone understands that they are giving it out of love. And so that is a very important moment of truth. Are people doing it out of love, or people are doing it more on a transactional basis? Because that is premise number one. Because we talk a lot about the dignity of work, and dignity of work requires a deep understanding of the relationship, right? So that's the first premise, baking out of love. Then number two, your customers. How are they loved? Other than the very obvious thing that they're buying a cake from you because you make a great cake, right? How are they going beyond this is just a nicely designed birthday cake? How are they inspired in their relationship? How do you actually use the cake as an excuse to trying to bring people together? How are you inventing new ways to do that, right? So that's number two. Then when you understand the first one, baking with love and giving with love, then your human resource, which everybody assumes is a template. Oh, other companies are doing this, this is what I do. It is not true. You have every right to shape human resource according to your beliefs and values. And I think I always had problem, being in the consulting business for almost two decades. I always have a problem with the word human resource because you treat people as a resource, as a horrible thing. What we like to do as counselors is we always like to almost change it to talent development. We are here to develop, to help shape people. You know what I mean? We don't treat them as a resource. They are not a commodity. So when you understand you're baking with love and you're giving with love, then a different culture comes about. Then the culture is more doing things together. What do you think? How can we proceed together? Because most companies or bakeries, the relationship is almost like a control. You have to deliver this quality, right? So there's a lot of stress because it's time related. And because of this stress and because people are fulfilling and not feeling loved, there's very little innovation. And that's why they don't progress very well. So what we believe is that when people feel loved, when people feel that there's dignity internally for the staff and dignity for the customers, your innovation goes up. Your level of participation and mutual giving goes up. Then everyone starts to become more generous. Everyone starts to say, how can I help you? We have a bakery in South Korea that is an economy of communion bakery. One day, for some unknown reason, maybe it's an electrical short circuit, there was a fire and the entire factory was burned down. So you could say the bakery is worth nothing, no value. But because they have lived sincerely as an economy of communion enterprise to love each employee and to love each customer, immediately the staff said, we will not take the salary, we will work together and bake new cakes and breads until the factory is rebuilt. They are the most successful bakery in their province in Korea. When Pope Francis visited South Korea, they were the appointed baker for his special bread. So just to say, in business, there is a very generic secular saying, what you invest is what you get. In the economy of communion, how much you love is what you receive back. So I think love is always a better bet than simply money, because money is too cheap at times, but love is priceless. That is the economy of communion.
We have another question about, you talk a lot about education and how important is it. And so we have a question from a teacher. And well, she's asking, what should the teachers give to the students to form them to see the economy differently? And what are the biggest mistakes that teachers maybe do?
Thank you for that question. It's very good, and I also asked Stano, my brother, to contribute. I would just say two things. Number one, in many schools, students come from different classes, and different classes, they come of society. Let's put it this way. So how do you create not just an environment for learning, but an environment for welcoming? Just to tell you, in COVID-19, many countries were forced into lockdown. But there are many families who cannot afford a computer at home, and many families cannot afford internet at home. How can these classrooms of today and the future be more than just learning, but also to be aware of the challenges of the friends and the peers around them, and how can the teacher go not just to give very competent teaching, of course, but also to teach lifelong values of appreciating and helping one another. There is a very interesting social study done that when a community feels the need or the importance of helping another person, their resilience is higher. Their mental well-being is better because they have more social support. What you're seeing in COVID-19 is a lot of people go crazy because their social networks are very poor. They don't have meaningful relationships because they are so focused on succeeding and doing, right? So how can classrooms for any age be welcoming places for inclusion? That's number one. Number two, be very careful in how you teach value. Be very careful in how you say this student is better, that student is not. Because we are in Industry 4.0 is increasingly going to be about how do we deal with complexity and diversity. And COVID-19 is a very, very classic example that all the known rules and the frameworks that are used to is being thrown out of the window. So if we want our youth to be more resilient, we need to get them to be more flexible. We need to get them to be more open. So I think that's the other thing that will matter. If I can add this to, and I asked Stano to contribute on education as well. Thank you.
I think the whole educational system, and we know this very well, is in a kind of crisis. Because a lot of people feel that it can't go ahead like it is. And that it is important what Lorenz mentioned, that the most the school can give to the children is to learn values, but not by being taught, but by living them. For this, the schools which are able to bring the children together work on a project basis, work on an inclusive basis, where the value of every pupil comes out. These schools, nevertheless, they might be in a kind of difficult situation because the pressure of the methods and of the curricula is quite hard. So it requires kind of braveness in this, but this school really prepared the children for the life. I mean, especially today, we can see very well, and there are a lot of studies showing this, that it's not the children who get the best votes while studying are those who succeed in the life. I think this is very meaningful. Then there are a lot of children with specific troubles, which has to be loved in a very personal way. So this requires also a high grade of professionality of the teachers. But once loved very personally in the community of the class, these children can be the biggest contribution to the class and later to the companies, to the communities, and so on. So this is like trying to look behind the corner of the single life journeys of the children. Of course, there are a lot of limits, like too big classes, very hard rhythm of informations which should be like taught. But I think this is a moment for the teachers to listen to the heart. And this is only the first moment. It's important to get together. I mean, every change happened when people who felt that something needs to be changed started to happen when the people were able to organize themselves, talk, give a name to the problems. Because otherwise, not even the politicians can bring about a change when there is not a clear, meaningful, also difficult discussion in the field of the expert community of all the participants of the educational process. And this is not only schools. This is parents. This is municipalities. This is just we can think on the vocational education. We can think of the dual system. There are a lot of players which are there. It's just important to have the audacity to go and talk, bring people together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, this here is a question which is like a reaction to this, and is that that the school alone, it's not, as an institution, it's not possible to make this change, and so and from the government the change is not coming, and so if the companies or the businessmen they can't to do that change in the schools because it's not their like what they should do. So what to do with this situation?
I have a very concrete example in the school where actually all of my four children went to. We created, I don't know why, maybe it was an inspiration. We created a so-called Fathers Club. Fathers Club 2 minutes to 8, because most of the fathers met 2 minutes to 8 in the last moment, bringing the children to the school. And I mean, I've been just talking about all the participants of the educational process. If we feel the challenge, and if we feel also the lack of money, for example, it's only up to us to do something. We can't expect that someone starts the process, that a politician starts the process, or that the new government, I mean, God bless them, and we are happy to have them now. But we should start. We should think about. I mean, there are so many possibilities on creating foundations by parents, by companies, to adopt a school in a certain way, to help, to support. Yes, we know. And of course, on the other hand, this is a time which challenges the teacher. It's hard, but they shouldn't feel alone. And this is what I'm saying also to all the parents, to all the entrepreneurs which are around the school. I mean, the entrepreneurs, the people with money, should be not there only to give them money so that their children are followed well, but they should have the responsibility also for the whole school, for all the children.
I can say just a little sentence to this. I was asked personally by a professor on the economic university, and she asked me to come to the students and tell them how we live the everyday life in our company and what we are doing. So this is also some teaching and education.
Yeah.
So it was here in Bratislava, so we do not need to go very further.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. And I think we are going out of time, but there are many questions. But I would like to ask, there is a question if it's possible to follow these principles or to live economy of communion also in non-profit sector, if it's also for them.
Yes, certainly. We are working with a number of non-profit as we speak. I think in terms of the cultural model and the model of relationship is very relevant to the non-profit. They are not sharing the profit to help the poor because they themselves are involved in helping the poor. They themselves are involved in giving something back to those people in need. But definitely the cultural model. And I mean, actually a lot of non-profit organizations, they face relationship challenges. like the culture is not as collaborative, it's quite stressful as well because they are small organizations. So certainly economy of communion then becomes very useful in order to help them examine, reflect, and to redesign a way in order to make it less, to ensure a balance between well-being and the need to do things for others. Because a lot of non-profit organizations, they focus on outside, they focus on giving to others, but they fail to take care of themselves, the people within. And the people within, they are really squeezed. They have no more air, and they can't breathe. So I think the economy of communion calls you to act in equilibrium, calls you to remember that above all, you are trying to shape a civilization of love. And if you want to shape a civilization of love, then you need to be that little cube of love in your non-profit organization and to remember to take time to recover that love. So I think that's one big part of the EOC. The other part is the operation model, like to rethink some of the fundraising, to rethink some of the solutions that whether or not it will actually help to impact not just in giving something to the least, but how to enable a sustainable, a virtuous cycle of generating to make things sustainable. Because a lot of non-profit, they are very stressed, on how to be sustainable. So yeah, so those two things, EOC is very useful. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And now I'll ask one question more, and then we are going to talk with our Slovak guests, and then we can go back to questions again. And so the last question for now is what specific results achieved companies which started to follow these principles or which started to live the economy of communion, and in which ways their way of doing things is different, and if you could tell us some specific attributes or something like that.
Yes. So just four very important framework. Number one, the economy of communion companies tend to attract what we call people of exceptional purpose. That means they know that this is more than just a transaction. They are part of a bigger purpose. So having said that, then it's less expensive in a sense to try to control people. Because you must understand that a lot of companies, they have to deal with office politics, they have to deal with managing people. And economy of communion as a management methodology makes it easier to shape a purposeful culture, because everyone knows that we are here for a different purpose. It's just like us, our firm. We are present in 16 countries. The other day I was giving a talk with my diocese. They were asking me, do I have to motivate my staff? I said, I don't have to, because before you join the company, you have to go through you have to write your own personal journey, and you are evaluated by a panel that is global. And we look for signs about whether that person is aligned with the purpose before we welcome the person in. So being clear about the higher purpose, being able to attract a different quality of people is one important thing. The second important characteristic I would say is, like the Korean bakery, they won one of the best well-run companies in Korea. They were also awarded by the government for being a very responsible taxpayer. They won many business awards. But the reason why they are an exceptional company was because remember I said you attracted exceptional people, and because the staff don't feel that you're trying to take advantage of them. And because the staff feel that you're not trying to take advantage of them, they act in freedom and they feel love and they feel that the company is not just a company, but they feel at home. And so they do very well, right? So that results in high above average growth, and also result in them winning the award. So number two, you can say that economy and convenient businesses, entities, if they are lived well, if they are practiced well, of course, the devil is in the details, as we always say. That means it's how well you do it, right? You cannot just say I'm an EOC company, but I'm in name. You don't actually try to live it, yeah? But if you live it well, you definitely will see a better culture, better innovation, better level of collaboration. And innovation and collaboration is two of the biggest struggles in many companies nowadays. Because at Consulus, we study organizations in so many countries. Most companies are transactional. There's no trust, right? So that number two is a very important for indicator of an economy and community in terms of social, economic impact. And the third is a very important third. Now, if you tell your staff, okay, this year we have to do social impact work. We are going to visit a nursing home and then to visit the elderly, spend time with them. This kind of activities is what we call, by the way, social responsibility. It will not change mindset. But if everyone in the company knows that their ultimate mission is to better the least, to care for those who are left out, if they have this mindset, it also means that the people in your company have an exceptional sensitivity to what's going on around them. And why is that good for you? That's good for you because in terms of strategy, in terms of business, you have heightened sensitivity on the undercurrents that's happening in society, and you're best able to react. And also because you have been used to giving. You're not just giving once a year, but you are giving internally, you're giving to the people in need. So you're very close to what we call the sense on the ground. And interestingly, this is another important characteristic in business management. We call this, it's known as know your customer. But then I would say that know your customer is not enough. Know your surroundings. If you are an economy of communion and you know your surrounding very well, who is the need, you know what is happening to the whole situation, you know what's happening to the market, and then it helps you to be more resilient. So at these three levels, exceptional people, exceptional culture, and exceptional awareness, and that you are still giving. So it's a very different construct from social responsibility because it calls you to be deeply aware of purpose. It calls you to be able to bring people together in order to make a better world. That is the economy of communion.
Well, thank you very much. There are many more questions, but well, we have to go to the other section because, well, many people ask about how to implement economy of communion in Slovakia and what about Slovakia and so on. And so we have two guests from Slovakia which can respond these questions. And so now we are going to listen to them. Well, thank you, Lawrence, for now. Maybe we are going back with some more questions if we have more time. But now, well, I would like to introduce more Stanislav Lencz, who is a director of Consulus here in Slovakia. He studied mathematics and physics here in Slovakia at the University of Comenius. He worked in various different companies, and now he's in Consulus. And so I would like to ask you, or well, yeah, to tell us something about what is the economic of communion for you, and how how do you implement it, and I don't know how does it or how can it work here in Slovakia?
Mm-hmm. Well, I prepared a bit of text. I will shorten it a little bit because of the time, because it's definitely better to respond questions than not to talk about something prepared. But I want to mention at least something from this. Because we've been talking about economy of communion as a remedy for the current situation.
Yeah.
As a child, I saw a film in which a family of an English lord with their servants were shipwrecked on a desert island. As it was a matter of survival and the order of things was completely changed, so their butler, a clever and practical man, became eventually their boss. At one point, thanks to the new position, a hitherto platonic relationship with the lord's daughter began to develop. The new arrangement was also respected by the Lord himself. However, I remember the disappointment of the child spectator in me when, after the rescue and return to the civilization, the butler humbly returned to his original role and all other things returned there. So what is causing the COVID-19 crisis? How to help in it and during its aftermath? And what can be done to move things somewhere thanks to the economy of communion so they do not go back after the crisis? Let me now go a few years back in my own history. Chiara Lubich and her charism of unity appeared in my life as God's gift in my childhood. As a child and a young man, I remember having been fascinated by the profundity and authenticity of Chiara's charism. I was touched by her vision of Trinitarian God, of the church, of spirituality, of world, of society, and the whole creation. As adult, I began seeing more and more clearly that what has lifted me up as an almost utopic ideal of gospel in my childhood is what I was discovering as the DNA of all good knowledge, experience, and best practice. In living out the gospel and in being a lived part of the church, where besides Peter and Paul there is also Mary. In professional practice, in economical relations and practices, in leadership, in politics, in education, in community life. Strangely, we can realize that God in his love doesn't forget anyone in preparing a new epoch, putting his seeds of love and wisdom not only in the church, but among all of his children, among faithful of all religions, and among all people of goodwill. My professional career brought me to work in several successful companies and projects. The charism of unity in diversity, lived out in everyday life, helped me to grow in humility and professionalism, bringing gradually more and more clarity in the purpose of my human vocation. This is what I see as one of the first and maybe most important fruits of the charism and of the economy of communion. After a series of circumstances, I eventually met Lawrence and with him Consulus, which is a member of the Economy of Communion network. Like there are love languages in marriage, in Consulus I found the love languages of the world of activity, of work, of entrepreneurship and economy. Love and unity in diversity translated into practices, into methodologies, into business rules and economical principles, which are born and articulated from inside out, from the person, from the collective, as something everyone can understand and adhere to. So in 2018, I joined Consulus, still continuing to work for the IT company I'm still in, and launched its initiative and activities in Europe with a few people, friends of mine, in 2019. Now, as the COVID-19 crisis began, we were with Lorenz in the midst of a global consulting project. Right 4 weeks before a strategic business model design session for 60 plus people from all over the world, which were supposed to gather in one place, of course. We took this challenge and with the support of the client, revert completely the methodology to make the workshop happen fully online. Something similar as you did with Bratislavské Hanusové dni. You can imagine the amount of work. However, it worked, and it worked well. Not only the presentation of hard facts and discussion on it, but especially the strong engagement of the participants in the dynamics of searching, finding, and confirming a new purposeful business model of the client's network. Now we're coming to the point. Immediately after we asked ourselves whether this was a call to use our experience, incidents, and network to serve those in need. As Lorenz mentioned, 3 weeks ago with Consulus we launched a complimentary 1-hour online consultation for small and middle enterprises and non-profit organizations to tackle where they have most pain: cash balance and cash flow, immediate new revenue, and creation of new revenue streams by changing approach. Paradoxically, as we all are aware, for many, the recent years have been quite successful, and it has encouraged many to invest profits in innovation, employment, expansion, growth, thus reducing actual financial reserves. Now, however, most actors in the economy are under stress because what worked before has stopped working, especially for the small and middle companies. Economic activities, brands, and their value are suddenly questioned, orders cancelled, sales of products and services have dramatically dropped, with everyone thinking about how to drastically cut costs and calculating how long their cash balance and the remaining cash flow would last. The question on the everyday's agenda is what will happen next, if it is still worth it, and how to provide at least one's own family. The crisis also affected non-profit organizations, as it cut off their income, and due to social distancing, it complicated the activities for which they were created. We could actually stop here and everyone could tell how the existence of his or her family and friends was shook. In a certain sense, in our understanding, the impact of the crisis acts as a gigantic magnifying glass, making visible the deficiencies of ours. In not basing our entrepreneurship on a clear purpose, in not building our brand on humanity, on community, and strong and responsible relations, in not being flexible enough and open to new local and global challenges, answering the real needs of our customers and clients right now, or in our little ability to make use of digital technologies, and in not living truly our leadership as a service. What struck most of our clients we already consulted in this way was the clarity of vision and concreteness of our advices. Thanks to our experience and multidisciplinary approach, we were able to understand quickly their biggest troubles, touch the purpose of existence of the company or organization, point out hidden reserves, offering a widened vision, and coming up with very concrete steps. But what is for us the most important thing is that we see that our consulting helps to get out from the cage of fear and open up to brothers and sisters, which the employees, partners, suppliers, and customers are, and lay basis for a new approach in shaping our own business. Because once you try that loving concretely and more in business can become process and method, and that it works, you probably won't step back This year is the centenary of Chiara's birth. Dignified celebrations were prepared for the whole year, involving her hometown of Trent, the diocese, the entire Trent region, and the Trentino South Tyrol Autonomous Region. But a crisis associated with the virus has come. And so we thank God for her service in the church and the world in the same way as she would, we think so. We live for our people, for the society around us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so we will now talk with Mr. Sepp, and then we're going to talk about the questions in Slido. Okay, well, I would like to introduce Martin Sepp firstly, and it's he is a director of Plout Slovakia, which is a consulting company. Not only that, but which is focused on electronic and digital field. And before that, you worked in an American company, Sybase, and also as a director of IT section in the administration of Slovak government. Mm-hmm. And now you run your company on the principles of the economy of communion. And I would really like to ask you, what does it mean to your company? How does it influence the management and so?
I would start maybe different. I'm not a director, I'm an owner, co-owner of the company, Plout. We are, let's say, 80 people, employees, and management is four people. And we are trying to, every day, to be better in, as Lawrence said, loving our client, loving our partners, loving our competition. This is what also I put as a motto for these days. And very important in our company is that our company, we are not a structured company of EOC, or Economy of Communion. I am an entrepreneur who is trying to live the principles of Economy of Communion. That means, and also to reply to other questions, not everybody or not the company has to be Economy of Communion, but the persons in the company who are trying to live differently. And my personal feeling of what does myself, an entrepreneur of Economy of Communion, is that I try to live the culture of giving. So culture of giving is the very important part of Economy of Communion, that you start to think how to share the goods and the profits what the company is doing, how to share it internally in the company, and how to share it also then externally to support other companies, whatever. That means it's a way of life to be an entrepreneur of Economy of Communion. So it doesn't matter, that doesn't mean that a company needs to be somewhere registered. Okay, as well, that there is a registration process, so there are companies which are registered. Our company is also registered, but I feel that this is my personal way of my change. Maybe it's an introduction to the company. Yeah.
And do you think it's possible to practice this Economy of Communion now in the times of a global pandemic? And if so, in your company, how are you doing that?
Okay, there is one simple example. As we started to sit home when the lockout started, we had a management meeting with my colleagues, and I have felt that there is a fear of what will come later, and that we need to make some financial buffer for the bad times. And there was an idea to cut off some extra bonuses, what we wanted to pay to our employees, by a fixed percentage of some bonus part for all the people. Then after we discussed with my director, we saw that this is not a good thing because let's do it differently. So we did it that way, that we discussed with everybody. So we talked to the people and we saw that we can do the buffer by creating it not across the whole company, so it will not have a negative social impact. So this is one example what we did now. The second example is with my colleague, who is the business director, who sits at home as well, but he's not doing business for our company, but he's trying to save the people in his environment. He's making a network of volunteers to help the people with the basic things, like because the people are afraid, and he is helping him, and he can do this in our company because we know that for us is not important only the turnover and the profit, but we want to leave the love to the neighbor at this time in our company. So we let him to do this.
Thank you. And well, I think it's interesting to see what the principles of the economy of communion are, and it's very nice. But then the life of a company is not just I don't know, roses. And well, how do you live this or these principles if you see, for example, that other partners in your company aren't? And well, I don't know if you want to respond these questions. It's from Slido, but sometimes it's hard to maybe to live this, and when some things come. And for example, how did you live this economy of communion and in the history of the company, and maybe if some doing business with government?
Okay, I see the question is maybe very concrete because I have my history. Really, our company is doing in the public sector. We are doing the business already more than 10 years with public sector, with government. And you can search on the internet what we did or what we did not. And mostly the problem is that the media is not very friendly and not telling the truth always. So as I said, we are people who lives in the company, who tries to change the internal relationships to relationships of the brotherhood. So we don't want to be we don't want to have people like active like workers only, but we try to live with them like brothers. So we know their needs and we work together. So I understand the question, but the problem is that the informations what maybe the guy who is asking this has maybe a lot of informations from media, and we have always done our business clearly to be very responsible to what we do with high professionality, high quality. And okay, there was some scandals, maybe it's about the scandals, but the scandals were not fulfilled. I mean, this was always something what told, hey, you guys, you would do that very bad if it would happen, but it never happened. And so that is, so the economy of communion is a process where we need to change our attitude to economy and to the business, our personal attitude, and change to understand, to accept the customers, to love them.
Okay, thank you. And then there is another question for you, because well, you have an IT company, and here in Slovakia there is a high demand for the IT people. And so this person asked that, well, I think he has an IT company, yeah, I think, yeah. And so it's normal to give lots of benefits to the employees and to have a really good relationship. And so, because it just, you have to do that, because if not, you're not going to attract the people. And so, so if the economy of communion, now talking about the relationship of employee and the employer, if it's just this, like to make people feel good at work and to have a food day and to have a, I don't know, relax room, or what is it? What's that?
No, this is a different thing. The economy of communion is a basic principle to have the relationship between the chief and the employee, that they are on the same level. They are building a brotherhood style of relationship. That means it has nothing with bonuses, salaries, cars, or some positive things. We are doing this in our company like in other companies, that we have very good social things what we can offer to the customers, but this is not the economy of communion. The economy of communion is that you start to change yourselves to shape the world, to make the world around you better, not to be a money maker. You need to change to be a value maker, to make the better world.
Thank you very much. And now we have to finish already.
Okay.
But one really, really fast question, because I think that it's quite important, that one person asked where she or he can find more about economy of communion, and if there are some documents or something.
Okay, there is a website, worldwide, and a Slovak one also, www.ekonomikaspoločenstva.sk. And there are a lot of documents, a lot of students have done work, diploma, thesis work, and you can find lot of things. So just put in the Google, and that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Okay.
well, so this was really the last question, and I really think that this discussion and this event was something we need right now, because well, I work as an economic journalist, and now the only thing we hear is how the economy is going badly and how bad it's going to be, and if we are going to repeat the Great Depression. And so, and it's good to hear in these times something optimistic and some solutions. And so I really want to thank you Lawrence Chong, thank you Stanislav Lencz and Martin Sepp for your time, and well, and I hope that we inspired you, and that maybe we will inspire more people with this discussion to start a change and to start to look at the economics differently. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, once again, thank to our dear guests, thanks to our hosts as well. Thank you, dear viewers, for staying with us, and I encourage you to continue to doing that, as 3 more great and important discussions follows. First of them being the discussion when we are going to discuss children's fate and how to approach it. It starts in about 20 minutes, something after 4 p.m., so stay tuned and we'll be back in a short time. You can find all the streams from BHD Online on our YouTube channel, Hanusové dny, as well as you can find all of the other streams for our previous events there. So check that out, feel free. Once again, I would like to thank our sponsors, our partners. Our main partner is Plout Company, and besides BHD Online, they also provide cloud retail solution using user mobile interface at the first points of contact. And as you may have heard for yourself from Mr. Sepp, their motto is to treat the company of your partner, your client, and your competitor as your own. Thank you. Also, I would like to thank our main media partner, conservative newspaper Postoj, and as well as our other partners and sponsors. Let me shortly mention also the organizer of the BHD Online, the Ladislav Hanus Fellowship. You can find more information on the fellowship itself, on our academic programs that are starting in September, and on our plans and other activities on our websites, or please follow us at our media profiles, on our media profiles, social media profiles. My last invitation is to support us also financially. One easy way how to do it is to visit our website bhd.sk, and there is a couple of ways you can provide your support using the button or the QR code or the bank account. Thank you in advance for all of your generous support. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, and see you, dear ladies and gentlemen, in a couple of minutes. Goodbye.